During the 7 years, my ex-husband controlled pretty much everything. I was alone here.
Between 2000 and 2010, an estimated 248,000 children in the U.S. found themselves taking on a very grown-up commitment. They got married. Last week in Florida, the state Senate took up a bill to put a stop to that.
37 yeas, 0 nays, Mr. President.
So by your vote, the bill passes.
If the measure gets signed into law, Florida would actually become the first state in the country to flat-out ban child marriage. It's the kind of proposal that's been met with some unusual pushback in other parts of the U.S.
This was me right before I went to see my dad. I was 15. My dad had moved to California and he wanted me to come visit him that summer. I wasn't looking forward to seeing him, actually. As soon as I got off the plane, he kind of sat me down and said, you're at an age where boys are becoming interested in you and you need to get married.
It happened very, very quick. It was within months of me arriving to the United States that an older man put his eyes on me, saying that he liked me, that he wanted to date me, that he wanted to marry me because he was in love with me. My family never asked me if I wanted to get married. They just went ahead and planned it.
Walking into the chapel, my ex-husband was committing statutory rape. I was clearly 8 months pregnant. I was a 16-year-old, and he was then 29. So that should have been an indicator to the people there to call the cops, but instead they officiated my marriage certificate.
When I was 14, people heard me saying that I had to go home from school to do chores because I was married. A lot of people would not believe me.
Last March, after hearing about a 12-year-old girl engaged to be married in his congressional district, State Senator Jerry Hill authored a bill to completely ban child marriage in California.
Well, my first thought was that, well, wait, that can't happen here. I mean, this is California. We don't do those things, and there are laws against that. But then we did a little research and found that, no, it was correct. In California, there is no minimum age for marriage. We thought we would move forward with legislation in California that would limit the age of marriage to 18 or above. And I felt that this was one of those no-brainers. This is one of those common sense pieces of legislation everyone would get behind. Well, as soon as we introduced the bill, then we started seeing and receiving the opposition that came in, very upset with establishing any age for marriage.
The first opponent to surface was the American Civil Liberties Union, which says it supports the sentiment behind ending child marriage, but insists the freedom to marry is a constitutional right, regardless of age. More surprising is opposition from Planned Parenthood, which is famous for protecting the health and well-being of women.
Planned Parenthood came in and were very concerned about the legislation. They felt that if you had to be a certain age to marry, then that would take away the ability of a minor to make some decisions related to choice, whether it's an abortion or something else.
In a statement, Planned Parenthood suggested that it, too, opposes child marriage, and yet it seemingly doesn't support codifying that opposition into law. Sources with other human rights organizations say that Senator Hill is right. Planned Parenthood could be worried that denying minors the right to marry will give its opponents the ammunition to deny minors reproductive rights as well. It's an awkward position, which may explain why Planned Parenthood refused multiple interview attempts with Vice News.
I'm one of hundreds of thousands of girls. I'm just one story. How many survivors need to come forward? There needs to be protections. I mean, I just don't think it's that hard of an issue.
During the 7 years, my ex-husband controlled pretty much everything. The reason I did not get the custody of my child is because I was alone here. I didn't have the money to pay attorneys. The most difficult part of this long journey is definitely not having my daughter with me. That part.
Floridians like Delma are now watching if their state will be the first in the country to ban child marriage.
Unfortunately, in Florida, anything is possible. And we've had children as young as 11 be married in this state. And every colleague that I have spoken to thinks that that is abhorrent, and we will seek to change that this year.
Child marriage is still ever present in our state. This bill makes one simple change. It prohibits marriage license from being granted to minors under the age of 18. That is the bill, Mr. President.
This is not Florida. This is not what Florida's about. We need to protect our minors.
The bill now heads to the Florida House, where a final vote is expected next week. Several state representatives have recently raised objections, which could derail the bill's passage.
I think it's an issue whose time has come, so I'm optimistic, but I don't take anything for granted, and we'll work very hard to make sure that we can pass this bill this session and make right what is a terrible occurrence, not just in Florida, but around the country.